A very good day to everyone, and welcome back to our ISCCM's Vodcast series for the month of June. As always, we have some very enterprising topics for you and really impressive faculty experts lined up with us for today. The topic for today's discussion is wearable devices in the ICU. You talk about monitoring devices or maybe therapeutic devices, whatever it is. We're just going to talk about anything that you might fancy. Maybe they are there already, maybe they are not there, or maybe you are already exposed to some common devices, something really far away in the pipeline. So we're just going to have an informal discussion on the go. And for this purpose, we have with us Dr. Ramanathan Lakshmanan, who is the Executive Clinical Director at Fairfield Hospital. He is the ICU HOD at Campbelltown Hospital, the clinical lead for organ and tissue donation, as well as senior staff specialist at Liverpool Hospital, Australia. Welcome, Dr. Ramanathan. And we also have with us Dr. Nikhlesh Jain, who is the Director and Operational Head, Department of Critical Care Services, Care CHL Hospital, Indore. Welcome, Dr. Nikhlesh. So, it was, yeah, thank you. We have with us Dr. Reshu Gupta, who's going to be moderating the session along with me. Welcome, Reshu. They're going to be seeing more of us in the coming months also. Anyways, so you know what? When I was just looking up this topic, I was totally impressed to see that possibly the first ever wearable devices, correct me if I'm wrong, dates back to the 1960s when the first ever Holter monitoring system came up. So looks like the cardiologists have taken the lead. And these days, we know the kind of cardiology equipments that are available, from wearable, watch-based echocardiography, electrocardiography, even implantable ultrasound probes they talk about, where you can monitor echo-based changes, all sorts of fancies. So let's start with Dr. Ramanathan. Dr. Ramanathan, we'd like to know what all devices that you can think of, what are there, what are in the pipeline, what are approved, not approved. How many of these you use? Again, it's so interesting that you are from Australia, and we would like to know the other side of the story also. What is available, what you already use, what you fear using, and limitations, whatever. I mean, we'd really like to hear your experience as well as what you look forward to handling in near future. Over to you, Dr. Ramanathan.
Absolutely. Thanks, Raymond, for your kind introduction. It is always fun coming back and having a chat with the ICCM colleagues. And working together with you guys means a lot for us. And something, from my point of view, is learning from each other and giving back to our country and our community is very important. So when you talk about wearable devices, as you rightly pointed out, Raymond, it's been there for ages. But as the technology has evolved, it's given us more opportunity. So I'm looking at it from an ideal device. What would you need? So an ideal device would be, it's cheap, it's available for everyone to wear, and it can all be integrated across into a huge monitoring space and storage space, where as a huge repository can be analyzed for everyone's good and pick up events, right, even in the community, and potentially give them a warning saying, you might have this disease process, or you might have a heart attack at this time of the day, and alert our patient populations to get to a hospital as soon as possible. So that would be the ideal world, where the appropriate use of remote monitoring would be at its peak. Unfortunately, we don't get what we want always, and there's bits and pieces involved in R&D. Every company wants their own money back, so they're looking for profiting their investors, and that's the case, be it with any kind of new onset medications, devices, so be it. So we're not there yet, but I'm sure we will get there with the amount of competition that we have, and invention and the indigenous locally made inventions that come across makes it cheaper, makes it available for everyone. And we're not too far from that ideal world site. So from what's available now, I think to start off, most of our smartphones and smart devices already have incorporated right from our face recognition, iris recognition. So they have your heart rate. The moment you sign up for, say, some of the healthcare apps, it automatically records your heart rate, your oxygenation, your sleep pattern. Pulse oximeter is available. Some of the modern devices include ECG. So they've already got so much of information from that specific manufacturer point of view, and putting it all together, they would be able to predict what's going to happen to you. The catch there is they're not evidence-based, they're not standardized. It's their own kind of device that they have worked out with, and there's no standard medical approval systems like the FDA or the TGA down in Australia, who've gone through the process, looked at the privacy aspect, and approved these devices. So they exist, and they can be potentially downloaded from certain company or manufacturers. If the person gives permission, they would be able to download it and submit it to their doctors and practitioners. So there, one thing that you got to identify or differentiate is what's a wearable device and what's a wearable sensor. Most, in fact, it all started off with the sensors, right? So sensors are simple devices which picks up one aspect of your information, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't have the brain behind it where it can integrate multiple sensors and provide you with an opportunity to analyze and interpret those findings. So that all, the combination of all these pretty much comes into a wearable device where it has the microprocessor in to analyze these information, upload, have that information uploaded into your smartphone and potentially into a cloud device, which then subsequently can be sent across to your clinicians or doctors or who looks after you, or even for your own benefit, download it. So there's lots happening, but we just don't know what's standard and what's approved and what's not approved. So the caveat here is we need to use a common device which is standardized and approved by everyone. Until then, you can't trust the information coming out of that. But a trend of these numbers is quite useful. A single value of these may not necessarily be useful from that perspective. So the where do you use them? So these are devices that can be used by anyone and everyone when you have a smartphone and a smartwatch. But coming into clinical practice or medical practice, we need to be using devices that are approved by governing bodies like the FDA and the TGA across for us in Australia, which means they've got to go through a rigorous testing process, standardizing the measurements across a huge number of population, and then getting it approved. There are quite a few devices which monitor your heart rate, blood pressure, pulse oximeter, saturations, EEGs, ECGs, all of these. And there are a few companies that produce them, and they're being tested widely now. And we are in the process of integrating these into our electronic medical records. I know Dr. Nikhlesh Jain is going to talk about that subsequently.
So, if maybe I would just like to.
That's all right, Reshu. We probably note it down as a
I'll
chat message.
get it across from Reshu.
And if you could get that across, thanks,
Yes.
Raymond.
Yeah,
So
I'll do
what are the limitations of these devices? As I said, standardization and validation or external validity of these devices is limited because they're not necessarily trialed across the globe. So that's something that we need to work on. The reliability and accuracy, as I said, is always a concern because each one have their own standards, and it becomes difficult to have a head-to-head comparison of these devices. Um, uh, the inherent problem with these devices is people need to be stable and they need to wear it all the time. And an ICU patient who's confused or agitated, it becomes quite difficult. So this in the most important patient that we would want to monitor these, say to avoid intubation and other things. In an agitated patient, we would want that vital information, and it's difficult to capture that information when the patient is not cooperative enough. Clearly, the advantages are, I think as time goes by, these can be implanted and potentially in a patch kind of a setup where it continues to monitor irrespective of what activity the patient is doing. And in those circumstances, we would be able to capture all this data and improve the overall outcome for these patients. The main use as of now, in fact, in our trial that we're going to try and do is to identify patients who could potentially deteriorate, mainly in the outreach kind of setting where the patients are waiting to come into ICU from the ward, or they've had a rapid response or a med call, and we've decided to leave the patient out in the ward. In those circumstances, having these devices in place and remotely monitoring their vital signs in the ICU kind of a setting would help us recognize further deterioration as soon as possible and get those patients in at the earliest possible time. To validate this information, there's been lots of trials. In fact, there's been 100,000 patient trial up in the US looking at respiratory depression and respiratory arrest for patients who need analgesia. Say they come in with a fracture, mainly rib fracture, that we really concerned with the elderly age. They have a fall, rib fracture. They're not sick enough to come into ICU, but they potentially can deteriorate at any time. These are patients who need good analgesia, good physiotherapy, and they are admitted towards setting, and they put on these remote monitoring devices. More so when they're not in that native specific ward, they admitted to a ward which may not be used to monitoring these patients regularly. And of the 100,000 patients, almost they could pick up 20% deterioration much earlier than they would have actually picked up by manual assessment. And though the number of med calls was increased because of the earlier pickup, it's fair enough to say they've prevented significant deterioration, at least 20% of those patients. And there were zero deaths once they've started this monitoring, whereas earlier they've had this unanticipated ICU admission or cardiac arrest, which is not warranted in hospital. So there's evidence to support this kind of process, and I'm happy to share the literature across to Raymond and potentially make it available. It's available open source, but there are informations available out there. Thanks, Raymond.
Hey, that was a beautiful narrative. In fact, And that also sums up so much of your experience and expertise with these remote monitoring systems. So is it uniformly applied in all hospitals across Australia already, or how does it happen?
So look, we divided by states, and most states and territories do have this remote monitoring ability. We do it in ICU as not only remote monitoring, but we do have the integration with electronic medical records. So we don't have to wait for a nurse to observe and document it. It's minute by minute information right from your arterial blood pressure tracing to pulse oximeter, and the heart rate is all recorded minute by minute and sent across to the electronic medical records process. What this allows is earlier detection. The one thing the bedside nurse has to do is to validate the information. Sometimes when the patient moves, you will have an erroneous ECG come by, and that information needs to be observed and validated. And you will have an erroneous blood pressure saying, oh, 30 systolic or 40 systolic again. It's because of the arterial line being moved. And those validation needs to be done. The advantage we have is it avoids the transcription errors. It avoids valuable time the nurse spends on documenting or transcribing these numbers. Whereas with the EMR devices integration, the nurse has more time to spend with or care for the patient rather than entering these data. So I hope I've answered your question there, Raymond. Yeah, it is available across the country. Yeah.
So the key to success is really all about integration with EMR. And who owns the process of this monitoring? Is it with the ICU, or you have a separate something like a command center? You have a separate set of doctors who go on a rotation for this monitoring?
Yeah, look, it's probably both. So in city hospitals within major cities, it's owned by ICU. We monitor it. There's a lot of data collection happening. It's the advantage that we have in Australia is the nursing is 1-to-1, and we're fortunate to have that process here. I know it's not feasible across the world. Even in the US, it's 1-to-4. We have the advantage of doing it 1-to-1. But we don't have the same facilities when we move rural. But it's about providing the same level of healthcare wherever you are. And it's important that we do that there. So in the rural setting, we do have that integration, and pretty much like a command center, that happens in some of the major specialized hospitals that we do. So we provide rural or remote service to 2 hospitals where I work, and it's significantly improved the service that they can provide in those facilities by improving managing patients locally rather than having to otherwise they would have transferred this patient across to a city hospital. Family has to travel quite a bit. So giving the confidence to the local team, improving their knowledge, and providing them with training resources, and having a backup for them has significantly improved patient outcome in these areas.
Dr. Reshu is back. Dr. Reshu, you had some question.
Yes. So here, Dr. Ram have very beautifully elaborated the different technologies, the different devices, what's being used, especially in his country, like from Australia. So Dr. Nikhlesh, any word, what is the Indian scenario? And if I would just like to add, there were some companies who had come with beds with some continuous monitoring of ECG, oxygen saturations, and heart rate. Again, we have those continuous patch of that glucose monitoring. Besides that, sir, any other technology or any other devices which you have been using and which is available in Indian context? Dr. Nikhlesh.
In Indian context, see, look at it, worldwide, the biggest, yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, see, the thing is that whenever we talk of standards, Now the problem comes, there's something called as IEEE standards, which is actually supposed to be the gold standard for monitoring devices. Whenever we compare these devices with the conventional monitors. So I'm just a little bit of addition to what Ram said. And what really happens is these standards were last revised in 2019. Having said that, there is no such standard or a standardized document which lays down the criteria for continuous monitoring devices in the form of wearables, which are coming in a big way now. Most of the wearables that we talk about when we talk about the continuous glucose monitoring devices, we need to understand that what is really happening there is that they are being inserted either into the adipose tissue or the peritoneal tissue, or so that they are able to detect the changes in sugars which are happening in real time. The problem that happens is that there is a lag actually, and critically ill patients it may not hold true. So this lag may actually sort of confuse us, or it may deem ours inappropriate. Ram discussed about a little bit about the wearables where we can actually talk about alarms. So alarms is also again one thing where we need to work upon, because we are not that nurse intensive country in terms of our intensive care services. So what really happens is, roughly put, the data is that a ICU nurse is supposed to handle around 700 alarms in a particular day, 24 hours. So that is a huge number of alarms, and it is something like maybe about 60 to 70% of them are not worth acting upon. So when we discuss that, you need to have, that's where a machine learning algorithm comes in, wherein you have to have a machine learning algorithm which can pick out the relevant alarms, so to say. And if you have the algorithm in place, then with that maybe we can move forward. When it comes to monitoring, India doesn't have too much of it. We are still in the era of smartwatches, wherein the sensitivity and specificity of those devices does not match your monitor-based devices to an extent that we can say that they will be replaceable currently. And when we talk about CGM, I've already discussed CGM. There are certain other things that are coming up when we talk in terms of the entire world, transcutaneous blood gas monitorings. Then you've got skin interface biosensor. Then you've got epidermal electronic device. Then you've got VR devices, which are actually being tried out for delirium patients now, trying to decrease the incidence of ICU delirium. Then you've got energy expenditure and frailty indexes, which are being coming into picture using these AI devices. Then ICU trauma patients, you've got wireless motility devices, which have come into vogue now, which are being tested. I won't say vogue, vogue is a wrong word, but which are being tested currently so that intestinal motility can be tested. So it's a huge lot of things. Now you've got helmet-shaped wearables. What they say is the data can be fed directly using your visual, auditory, and tactile stimuli, so as to make your workflow easier. So a whole lot of things happening there. I'm not sure as of now any of these technologies are adaptable and replicable on a large scale. Probably Ram would agree on that with me, that we need some more work. There's a lot of work, in fact, which is left behind in that. In fact, most of the work is happening in the area where you're going to monitor the vital signs of a patient inside the ICU using AI. Second problem that I think is a major one is that when you try to, sort of connect your EMR data to that, it may happen that because your patient is moving through different healthcare systems, these EMR data may not be, sort of in sync with all the systems. There are issues related to confidentiality, there are issues related to privacy, which may need to be dealt with, if not now, maybe sometime later, whenever the data sharing of these devices happen. This is all I think needs to be added. There's not much that's going on, but yes, probably you need to have a good wearable device, as you said. You need to have sufficient testing and standards. We still do not have these standards in place for these wearables. So that needs to happen. Thirdly, they should be able to replicate the monitoring devices that they are going to be tested with, which is not happening currently. The sensitivities and specificity of different devices all across the world. Most of them, they are doing big scale studies and everything, but it's not matching to a great degree. And fourth, of course, you need to have the proper machine learning algorithm with that alarm detection or alarm interpretation things, so that you can actually pick out that, look, this is the alarm which I actually need to act upon, rather than thinking that all the alarms are needed to be acted upon. And where I find a great application is because, as I told you before, we are, we have a huge problem with ICU nurses in our country. There's a lot of attrition, and we need to train them easily. We need to have them more at the bedside. So all these problems can be sorted out if we are having devices which are, as I say, standardized. The word I would use is standardized, and probably having a better machine learning algorithm with that. I would add that to it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr.
So, in fact, to that list, you can really keep going on and on with that list, like Nikhlesh has been talking over the last couple of minutes. Interestingly, there was this thing that I just read up, not that I've used or even seen, ingestible devices, for core body temperature
Correct.
monitoring. And likewise, there are these transcutaneous devices which can detect dysautonomia or early stress responses and things like that. So I think it sounds really fancy, but I'm sure we're going to be seeing all these things in near future. And of course, there are also always going to be these concerns about
There's
sensitivity,
one more thing.
specificity.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
one more thing, Raymond. What really happens is that what they have found is that vibratory things, vibratory devices which use vibration algorithms, they are performing better than your tactile algorithms.
Hmm.
So I do not know how far we go into the future. This becomes very difficult to, sort of put into practice about what the future is going to be. I think that is
Yeah.
the area wherein we would be going in.
So any
See,
When
clearly
literature
we are not talking about means of substituting or replacing our conventional ICU monitoring devices, but these are definitely going to be an add-on, a value addition to the way we look at more in terms of early warnings, I suppose.
That's right. So,
Yeah,
as Nikhlesh was
what we
saying
can
about,
do.
sorry, Nick, the alarm fatigues. That's a major concern with these devices. But again, there are integration processes in place where the manufacturers do put in specifications on which alarms need to be escalated to a higher level. So there are tactile and visual displays which would help us identify these alarms. They're all coming in place. The other concept that's happening is most of our usual hospital monitoring device manufacturers, they now moved into manufacturing wearable devices. I think that's where the win is. They've already got the standards where they practice kind of gold standards of hospital-based monitoring. And when they make the wearable devices, they tend to keep it to those standards. And it's easier for the approving bodies to then assess and compare the gold standard. So it's happening. It's not there yet, but I think in the next couple of years, we'll see quite a few devices being manufactured by these usual hospital monitoring system manufacturers.
Okay.
And one more thing, probably I would add that if you have a patient who's, say, maybe requiring an intermediate level of care, but if you think that these patients may be needing SOS critical care or SOS shifting to ICUs, these are the patients who would probably benefit the maximum, because with a wearable device, we would be able to monitor them to the point that we can actually preserve our beds, their expenses. I mean, everything comes in between.
That's right. In fact, Nikhlesh, that's what we are going to study on, and I've got a research program that's going to go on starting next month, and we'll have more data by the time I'll have some preliminary data by the time I come in for the Criticare next year.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Dr. Ram. Really.
Sure.
So could you just highlight, any one of you, what are the literatures at present there which are supporting the wearable ICU devices,
Or
or as
contradicting.
Dr. Yes, Dr. Raymond.
No, I said or
Do
contradicting,
you want to take
supporting
that,
or
Nick?
contradicting.
Right.
Nikhlesh, do you want to take it first? Then
Yeah,
I'll
there are
join.
more than I mean, when you read it, there are more than at least maybe 100 references that have come in now in literature that I could go through. And probably 2 or 3 papers, if you are okay with it, maybe I can send it across the group, which may be very relevant to the literature, because what really happens here is there are a lot of monitoring parameters that they've been working on, but the most common ones have been respiratory rate, heart rate, your tidal volumes. These are the commoner ones. And there's a lot of, amazingly, it's the PICU and the NICU subsets who are doing more work on AI when I did a literature review. I do not know why in particularly, but I've seen that happening. So that would be there. But of course, that there's a huge list. I mean, I personally know more than 100 papers. Ram may be knowing more.
Yeah. Look, as you
Total
rightly
number, I
said,
don't know.
Nikhlesh, there's a lot of information coming through. But again, the validity of those external validity of those papers is questionable because they use different devices, and they're not. You can't compare them head to head, and the manufacturers don't necessarily want that happening. They want to keep that status quo so they can sell their own devices. The best opportunity here is for government to interfere and make sure there's something standardized. They've done this for, say, IV fluids and other things. Like everyone manufactures, make it generic, right? It should be like pharmaceutical companies. You hold on your patent for a while, but then subsequently it needs to be generic devices, so everyone's benefiting from the process. I think that's what needs to happen for the future, and it will happen because this will become common for every citizen of every country, and then you should be able to share that information across. As you rightly pointed out, Nikhlesh, earlier, transferring from one device to the other device, or one monitoring system or one EMR to the other EMR, is a huge challenge. Even in developed countries like ours, in Australia, it has been a challenge in the past. But again, there's government interference saying, look, we've got to make it available for everyone who has the authorization. So at least from a clinician point of view, the information is available. Again, going back into electronic records, if you're the treating clinician, then the patient can give you access through a government application called My Health. So they have all the information related to their health recorded in that repository that the clinician treating the patient can have access to it. It's very important to audit these processes because you can have anyone working in the same hospital coming in, accessing that information. Could be a relative, could be a friend or a foe, but you can't let that happen. If you're not if the patient's not under your name, or you're not treating the patient as a team, then that's audited and they're punished severely. And I've known people who've lost jobs because of accessing medical records inappropriately. And you need to have permissions and from the Director of Medical Services if you're going to access a patient's record, say for research or anything else. So that's where the privacy and the governance onto these devices and the data that the devices produce need to be on board. If you have a good governance in place and the privacy and data protection would be an easy thing to do.
Dr. Reshu?
Yeah, I think a very, very important point Dr. Ram have raised. I think Dr. Nikhlesh would also agree regarding the data, the privacy, the patient privacy, the data what we are handling, and the use of those data in maybe any other medical legal issues or that. So any key points on that, Dr. Nikhlesh, regarding the use?
You look at it this way, in India, you may be having so many EMRs that it becomes difficult to integrate. And a patient may be migrating from one healthcare system to another very easily and casually. Unlike Australia, where Ram is, because there the system follows a flow, it follows checks, and it is actually able to monitor the patient as they move along different strata of the healthcare. We, on the other hand, would be classified as an absolute randomized control trial control to that, compared to that. Because the patient can go anywhere, the patient can get treated anywhere, and there would be absolutely no data integration because they tend to forget their prescriptions. They tend to, this data, putting it through a common link, it becomes, I don't know, I don't think EMR data connectivity is feasible at this point in time in India. Maybe after, it requires a lot of willpower, it requires a lot of inclination, it requires a lot of computer literacy, which I frankly feel will take time for another 4 5 years, at least 4 5 years as of now. And then maybe we can get something out on that. Said that, hopefully this would happen. This is what I can only say.
Yeah. Nikhlesh,
Data,
I appreciate your
we
optimism.
have.
I mean, many
yeah.
hospitals are moving on to EMR, but the real challenge is integrating patient
True.
information in the system, or
Yeah.
creating a system is going to be, I don't know.
I think it's
it's ironic from my perspective because some of our systems are being manufactured and supported by the big Indian IT companies, and then they're not doing the same for India. It's really ironic, right? I think that's where we need to work on and improve. Again, taking it completely out of context and a tangent here, priority is to discuss our devices. Hopefully, it will happen soon. I can see it, see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. Dr. Reshu, you can take over.
Okay. So I think we had a very, very, very informative discussion from the two experts where you had mentioned the different technologies, the different devices which are in use, which are in pipeline. Also, you mentioned about the literature supporting, but as when I was also preparing for this podcast, when I went through many literature, so as Dr. Ram had mentioned, we are not sure about the validity of those literatures because many of it I felt it was public, the company sponsored, and so anyways, looking forward for more and more literatures or trials coming up in the future. So I would just like to have few closing remarks from both our experts, from Dr. Ram first, the closing remarks on this pertinent issue what we are discussing today, the wearables technology in ICU.
Yeah. Thanks, Reshu, for that. Look, as I said, wearable devices is you cannot separate them from human beings anymore. Pretty much everyone has a device that we are providing data to, and it's inevitable that wearable devices are going to be used in all patients, irrespective of where they are, whether ICU or not. More so, as I said, outside of ICU, where the activity would be higher, and we've already started seeing that. The important thing as intensive care or critical care clinicians is to take it with both hands, accept that this is the generation that we've got to deal with, and try and utilize the wearable devices to the best possible extent so that we can provide better care for our patient, integrated care for our patients. And that's where I see it happening. And it's not too far. It's coming, and we should be ready to take it with both hands.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nikhlesh.
Okay, from my point of view, look at it this way, that I think first we need to evolve standards, possibly validate them, and then come across to the final barriers, maybe cost related, and of course their adoption, seamless adoption through different TMRs. I think that's where I see future in our country if we are to bring about a change in wearable devices in a big way, because cost also plays a role. And if, of course, if mediclaim companies jump into the fray and if they are able to, bridge that cost, accept that, and that would probably make the adoption of these devices very easy.
Thank you. Brilliantly ended. And I think we could not have got any much like better information as we had shared. I think our viewers, be it students, our residents, even consultants, would be benefited with this podcast, where we can see a future of ICU coming up. As Dr. Ram said, we should be happy and we should be accepting it with two hands. So that's what we look in our future of critical care, at least in India, yes, and all over the world as it is coming up. So we should also be ready with it. Over to you, Dr. Raymond.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramanathan and Dr. Nikhlesh. We've joined across time zones. Thanks a lot for your time. And with this, we can conclude the session. Our thanks to the ISCCM leadership, and everybody who have made these academic events possible. We have so many streaming almost once every week and more often. So, looking forward to meeting everyone very soon with the next podcast next month. So, until then, take care and thank you, everyone. See you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.